Gülen's ideas and activism have inspired a faith-based social movement in Turkey, sometimes referred to as Hizmet, literally meaning volunteer service movement. In his own terms, it is the movement of humans united around high human values. Gülen has been recognized for his consistent stance against the use of violence with a religious rhetoric. More specifically, he was the first Muslim scholar to condemn the acts of 9/11 with an advertisement in the Washington Post. He helped publish a scholarly book on the subject, unconditionally condemning terror and suicide attacks on humanitarian and on religious grounds. He did not express these views only to Western readers and in conferences, but he expressed them in mosque sermons in the presence of thousands of Muslims and to mainstream media outlets. Perhaps the most significant activity of the movement generated by Gülen's life and works is the educational movement. This movement consists of educational institutions such as K-12 schools, tutoring centers and reading rooms around the world in over 90 countries. Wherever they are, these schools are beacons of inter-ethnic, inter-religious harmony, in addition to their excellent academic success. You can find information about these schools in a recent issue of New York Times, which is also available on their website, dated May 4th. The Muslim relief organization Kimse Yok Mu, or Isn't There Anyone, is another example of a civic initiative inspired by his works. Established upon Gülen's encouragement, this institution has been instrumental in bringing aid to disaster victims around the world, such as the victims of the tsunami in Southeast Asia, the floods in Bangladesh, the earthquakes in Pakistan and Peru, and the ethno-political violence in Darfur. The organization assumed sponsorship of a village in Darfur, rebuilding their school and building a new medical facility. As we speak, this organization is working to help victims of the disasters in Myanmar and China. Some of you may be familiar with the works of the 13th century Sufi poet Rumi. The late Mevlevi Sufi master Shefik Can, who is a descendant of Rumi, wrote a book on the life and works of Rumi and invited Mr. Gülen to write the foreword for his book, calling him a modern-day Rumi. Like many other movers and shakers coming from a faith background, Mr. Gülen attracts the support and praise from a majority of the citizens of his homeland, Turkey, while at the same time he remains controversial for some of those citizens. The radical Islamic circles, although marginal, they called him too soft on Christians and an embedded secret agent of the Pope or the Vatican in Turkey. The neo-nationalist, former communist and Maoist circles called him a secret agent of the American CIA and Mossad. But the most persistent claim has been the suspicion of political ambitions, and in the longer term, they hover around his name as he approaches his 70s, suffering from cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and a host of other health problems. It appears that only his death will satisfy his critics, that he does not value political power in this world over God's pleasure in the hereafter. For further information about Mr. Gülen, as well as the Institute and its activities, you can consult our website, very easy to remember, guleninstitute.org. The Gulen Institute is honored to welcome Secretary Baker, another mover and shaker, contemporary mover and shaker, and I would like to thank you for your participation. Thank you.
How about that, a room full of movers and shakers, huh? Thank you so much for that, Doctor, appreciate it. Just out of curiosity, the folks who were there at the first Gulen Institute forum, the luncheon that we had, could you raise your hands, the very first one? See how many more people are catching on? Isn't that great? Thank you all for being here, and we hope that you feel welcome here today and that you'll continue to join us at further luncheons. Now, without further ado, though, I'd like to please ask your attention to the screen here while we get a brief presentation about the scope of the Gulen Institute. Now it's time to invite Mr. William Martin to introduce our guest speaker today. Dr. Martin is the Harry and Hazel Chauvin Senior Fellow in Religion and Public Policy at the Baker Institute and the Chauvin Emeritus Professor of Sociology at Rice University. Dr. Martin, if you could join us up here at the stage, please.
It's my privilege and pleasure to introduce today's speaker, who is without exaggeration one of our nation's most distinguished public servants. As White House Chief of Staff, Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary of State, he served the United States at the various highest levels during periods of historic transitions at home and abroad. As Secretary of State, he helped usher in the end of the Cold War without a shot being fired. He was instrumental in forging the unprecedented multinational coalition that ejected Saddam Hussein from Kuwait, and at the Madrid Peace Conference in 1991, he brought Israel and her Arab neighbors together for the first time in face-to-face talks. Since leaving office, our speaker has retained a keen interest in public affairs. No subjects are closer to his heart than the Arab-Israeli dispute and our country's relationship with Muslim states in the Middle East and elsewhere. He's been a clear and constant voice in support of American engagement in brokering a just and lasting peace between Israelis and Palestinians. Since 9/11, he has been eloquent in urging closer understanding between the United States and moderate Muslims around the world. In particular, he has been forthright in his criticism of those who see the struggle against terrorism as a clash of civilization between the West and Islam. He is a man rightly famous for his pragmatism and plain speech. He has a proven track record of reaching across partisan divides in search of policies with broad-based and sustainable support. And when he speaks, America and global leaders listen. It's a great honor for us to have him with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a privilege and pleasure to present the 67th Secretary of the Treasury, the 61st Secretary of the State, and I am proud to say, the honorary chair of the Rice University Institute that bears his name and has benefited so much from his many contributions. Mr. Secretary.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please stay seated. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you, Bill Martin.